Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Boy, oh boy, are there some interesting stories out there this morning. We're going to start with this wild DOJ indictment that involves a bunch of top online influencers. The details are really quite extraordinary. So we'll break all of that down for you. Yeah. Part of a broader crackdown on a Russian disinformation influence campaign. So we'll get into that broader effort as well. Trump did a Fox News town hall last night with Sean Hannity. A lot of hard-hitting questions there. But there were some interesting moments that we want to take you through.
It was despite Hannity that we got some.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and also it was billed as a town hall, but then nobody actually asked any questions outside of Sean Hannity.
It's like, okay, what's going on with that?
Whatever. Yeah. So we'll show you the highlights, lowlights, whatever lights from that. We also have some new polls to break down for you, in particular, a slew of new battleground polls from CNN that are quite interesting. And if they came to fruition, would have the Electoral College map so incredibly close. So this election continues to, be just as tight as it possibly could be. We're also going to break down fact from fiction on this wild Aurora gang apartment building story that has gone viral, that Elon Musk has been promoting. I'll just leave it at that, and we'll take you through all the details once we get to that block.
Yes. So boomers are up in arms about it.
Yes.
So, well, perhaps you can send it to your mom.
Yes, indeed. All right, so let's go ahead and get to this story. Just bear with me while I go through the details, because I think it will pay off for you in the end. So the DOJ put online an indictment of two Russian nationals who work for RT, okay? What they are alleged to have done is to have funneled $10 million through a Tennessee-based content creation company called Tenet Media. Okay, we can put this story up on the screen. So your major players are these two Russian nationals. They're the ones who are indicted. This media startup called Tenet, who has a number of very highly recognizable and influential right-wing media creators on their payroll, including Dave Rubin, Benny Johnson, Tim Pool, Lauren Southern, and a couple others I was less familiar with. Matt Christensen.
Yes.
And somebody Hansen.
Yes. It's
like the same name as somebody from the Hansen band. I don't remember, but it's not the same guy.
Anyway,
I actually looked it up just to make sure.
The major names of Benny Johnson, Tim Pool, and Dave Rubin. I think many
those
people
are the major ones.
Will know.
Yes. Okay. And again, none of these individuals are accused of wrongdoing.
Correct.
However, the details here are quite extraordinary. So, Tenet Media hires these influencers for extraordinary sums of money to produce some content for them. I'm talking like $100,000 a video, under the pretext that the Tenet Media people, run by Lauren Chen and her husband, what's his name? Liam Donovan. Under the pretext, which they apparently knew was a false pretext, that there was this elusive, wealthy businessman who was funding all of this. And again, we're talking like $100,000 a video plus, insane amounts of money for this, okay? So turns out that this elusive businessman is totally made up. Turns out that these two RT, like Russian agents, effectively, were influencing content. They were in the Discord telling these creators and the producers involved with these videos that were being, produced for this money, like, hey, let's focus in on this angle of maybe it was Ukraine that was behind the ISIS Moscow attack. Hey, why don't you guys post this Tucker Carlson grocery shopping video?
Mm-hmm.
I'll show you that in a minute, which is hilarious because one of the producers was actually like, this just seems like direct shilling. And they're like, no, you should do it. And they're like, okay, fine, we'll do it. So directly shaping content and getting paid through this, shady enterprise that comes direct. This is what's in the indictment, okay? These are the allegations from the government. So let me read you a little bit of that article that we just had up. It says the indictment claims the personalities on Tenet were not aware of the backgrounds and intentions of the two Russians, and that the funding for the company came through a Canadian shell company from a frontman named, and this is the fake guy, Edward Gregorian, who did not exist. Despite the fact that Google searches for Edward Gregorian did not return any results, two of the commentators, and it appears that those two commentators are, one of them is definitely Tim Pool, the other one's probably Benny Johnson, potentially Dave Rubin, are the sort of focus of a lot of what's in this indictment. In any case, despite the fact that the Google searches didn't return any hits for this dude, the two commentators went through with the deal, the indictment alleges, after receiving a resume. Let's put A2 up on the screen that has a little bit more detail. Eventually, they did the deal. Benny Johnson, we think that could be Dave Rubin, but one of the two of them would unknowingly work for the Russians for $400,000 a month in exchange for 4 monthly videos. Guys, we work in this industry. That is an insane amount of money per video, plus a $100,000 signing bonus. Apparently, Tim Pool also got the $100,000 a video, but no signing bonus. This person opines weak negotiating skills. Let's put the next piece up on the screen. This is the Tucker grocery store situation I was telling you about. So on or about February 15th, they say one of these producers who was using a pseudonym, who was actually a Russian national, works for RT, and one of the individuals who's actually indicted, shared with Tenet Media a video of, they say, a well-known U.S. political commentator visiting a grocery store in Russia. We all know that's Tucker Carlson. The Russian national posted the video in the producer Discord channel. Later that day, a producer privately messaged one of the founders, Lauren Chen, on Discord and said, they want me to post this, referencing the video that the Russian national had posted. But it just feels like overt shilling. Lauren Chen replies that her husband thinks we should put it out there. The producer acquiesces, responding, all right, I'll put it out tomorrow. So one of the reasons this detail is important is because it shows the direct impact that these Russian nationals who were posing as not Russian nationals and who were involved in this producer Discord were exerting on the type of content that was being produced. Let's put the ISIS Ukraine piece up here as well. It's another instance where they were trying to influence the content that was being put out by these creators. The Russians wanted to blame the ISIS Moscow attack. This person opines on Ukraine. They got commentator 3 to do it. So that would either be Dave Rubin or Benny Johnson. We're not sure, because the reason we're able to deduce who these people were is because the indictment lists not their names, but the number of YouTube subscribers they have.
Yes.
And Dave Rubin and Benny Johnson have basically the same number of subscribers. That's why we're not sure which is which. And they both ended up putting out statements. We'll get to those in a moment, but Saagar, initial reactions to this extraordinary chain of alleged events, which, by the way, no one is really denying it.
No, none of them are denying it. Lauren Chen has not put out a statement, neither her husband, Liam Donovan. So again, just to recap in the indictment, Dave Rubin, Benny Johnson, and Tim Pool were not aware, according to the U.S. government, that they were being paid via Russian cutouts. But the indictment makes it very clear that Lauren Chen and her husband were aware that, quote, it was the Russians in private communications.
Right.
Between the two of them, multiple other circumstantial evidence, guys, showing that they were like, when they couldn't get a response for why invoices weren't being paid, they were Googling time in Moscow as to why all of this was not coming in on time. I mean, at a philosophical level, it's sad, honestly, because it's very clear that the money was just so good that nobody was not asking real questions.
Yeah.
So for example, let's put A5, please, up on the screen.
This is amazing.
This is delicious because at one point they're like, hey, who is the guy? I want to see something about him. And this is literally the resume that was sent to them of some mystery rich man named Edward Gregorian. Now, we don't have full, like the resolution on this is actually quite bad because it comes from the indictment itself, but it says experienced finance professional and investor, deeply engaged in business and philanthropy, leveraging skills and resources to drive positive impact. Just a bunch of complete bullshit, honestly. Life and education. They say that he had a bachelor's degree in economics, a master's in accounting. He had some professional experience in financial analysis and consulting, but they list some fake banks that he had allegedly worked at, and in general said he was an accomplished financial professional, Mr. Gregorian. The problem is that a basic amount of research would have revealed that Gregorian does not exist because there was no financial footprint, there was no footprint on bank websites, there was no Google history. I mean, it's basically impossible in the world at this point to become a person who could afford $10 million funneling to these people without having a financial profile at all. It's basically, the chance is zero, especially if you were working in finance, LinkedIn, any bank records, bank websites, you know, even if you were using Archive or Wayback Machine or any of those, you'd be able to find them. And so that should have set off major alarm bells. But really what it is that because we work in this business, sorry, those sums are insane. And if you go on the Tenet Media YouTube channel, the videos were getting like 8,000 views. Okay, so just so everybody understands, 8,000 views. I mean, how much do you make off that? Maybe 150 bucks, maybe 100 bucks.
Maybe.
Yeah, if the producers want to correct me, they can, but it actually could be less. It could be like 50.
They say much less.
Oh, okay. See, I don't even know.
Yeah. Well, and
we don't have videos that get that low amount of views, so I don't know. But
especially when you consider the amount of production.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. The production value and everything.
I read through this entire indictment, which was enjoyable,
it
to be
too. It's
honest
funny.
with you, because some of the details there, again, are really quite entertaining. People were raising at the time, like, yeah, you know, the Tim Pool and whether it was Dave Rubin or Benny Johnson, like, they want all this money. There's no way this is going to be economic. And the Russians come back to her like, no, we're good with it.
Right.
It's like, okay.
I guess they
so
were just
what
like,
are we doing
okay.
here?
I mean,
and the other funny thing about the fake resume, so whether Benny Johnson or Dave Rubin, whoever was the commentator that was, you know, raising these questions and was asking like, hey, you know, I can't find anything about this guy. Like, can you send me something? And so he gets this farcical resume back.
Yes, yeah.
And the one concern that he raises is somewhere in the buzzword gobbledygook that's on this resume, it references social justice. And that was the one thing that he was like, whoa, I don't know.
You know,
I don't know.
I'll speak up for him. That is a red flag, right? Because if somebody has that on your resume and you don't know anything else about it.
Of all this situation, that was the red flag.
For me, the red flag is the money. I'd be like, hold on a second. You want to pay me $400,000 a month to post 4 videos. And each of those 4 videos is going to get 8,000 views. So you're going to make maybe a couple $100 at best over all of this. So what's in it for you?
But you know, the fact of the matter is, and you could speak to this probably better than I can, like, there is a lot of ideological money floating around in right-wing circles.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is like sort of in defense of them that, you know, there's all these billionaires who want to have their taxes cut. And so even if they don't, and $10 million is nothing to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so even if it's the posting of that one video isn't economic, they're engaged in a broader ideological project that they believe is going to pay off for them over time. And so, I mean, that's what's crazy is, like, obviously we don't swim in these ways. We don't take money from any. It's like all dependent on you guys and, you know, like really important, obviously, that we do those things. But that's why when I read through this, it feels so preposterous, because that amount of money just being thrown at you to do 4 videos a month is insane.
Well, I'll speak to a couple of things.
Yeah.
So first is the way that we set up our business. I'm extremely vindicated on this because for people who, you know, we've spoken about this some at length, but we are 100% financed by our premium subscribers through our subscription program, and then programmatic advertising, which is placed on YouTube or podcast ads.
That means
no
we've
interface.
never talked to an advertiser.
We've never spoken to an advertiser.
Period.
In fact, the only input that we have is that in certain categories that we don't want. So we could actually make even more money if we're willing to have like shilling credit cards or any of those other things play.
If we were just willing to read ads on our podcast.
Well, so that was my next thing. So then the next phase of that, and this is where, you know, there's been a lot of pressure always from any people who are involved in business. So they're like, well, you know, you can make 5 to 10 times more if you were to just read ads. And we're always like, yeah, but, you know, should a guy who's bringing you the news really be reading a ball shaving ad? Like, I don't really think so. And by the way, that is where the most money is. Or Blue Chew or any of these others. If you're a comedian, I totally get it. That's fine. Get your bag, you know, but whenever you're in news, like, it's just different. And so we never chased outside revenue. And that's part of what I see here is that when you're out there and you're making deals with gold companies and shaving companies and all these other things, maybe it doesn't seem as preposterous if somebody wants to pay you X $100,000 a month. And that's just in the private sector. Remember, these guys are getting millions and millions of views. Like, let's be real. There's a lot of money floating around. And then secondary to that is what you identified. And this is where I'm going to give them some defense and also just some criticism here of the DOJ where it's not 100% fair. How many people do you guys know who are on YouTube or elsewhere where you just suspect maybe these people are getting paid by Israel, by Ukraine, by, I mean, anybody, by Qatar, by Dubai, the United Arab Emirates, by anybody who has a vested interest in influencing U.S. politics. In fact, I have it on good authority that there are several so-called war YouTubers who are out there who are directly on the payroll of the Ukrainian government and or cutouts of the U.S. intelligence community. You know, we've covered, and we will get to this, in terms of secret Israeli influence operations, Qatari and influence operations, Iranian perhaps influence operations. Well, the DOJ obviously is very particularly singling out this Russian scheme of $10 million. Now, is that an excuse? No, because here's the truth. People with ethics or people with scruples like us, we would never do this. We would never even be in a position where a deal like this even gets presented.
Yeah.
Because our representatives are very aware. They're like, no, it's not on the table.
Not on the table.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I would have a lot of questions beyond like, why does it say social justice if someone's trying to throw that kind of money at you? That's immediate red flag. And we wouldn't even be in a position to field those deals. You're exactly right, because the people we work with know that we would never, ever even consider going down that path. But I mean, the thing that, so your point is correct. Yeah. There's obviously very selective enforcement of these laws. And if it's, friends, then of official friends of the United States, then okay, no problem, fund whoever you want, run whatever influence campaigns you want. We're gonna talk more about that when we talk about the sort of broader operation that they're conducting here, the DOJ is conducting under Merrick Garland. No doubt that it's selective enforcement, but also the specific thing they're accused of, not Tim Pool, not Dave Rubin, not whoever, but these Russian nationals are accused of. I mean, it obviously is illegal and should be illegal if the allegations are correct. Because not only, they adopted pseudonyms, they created a fake persona, they laundered this money through shell companies. They were in these Discord producer chats, like under pseudonyms, pretending to be people that they weren't, to manipulate this coverage. Like this is really dirty and nefarious. And the thing that disgusts me too, Saagar, is like, every time we have some opinions on Ukraine, on Israel, on what we've been accused of.
Yeah, taking money
from this regime or that. And so when you actually did it, you give so much credence.
Yes. Well, I was going to get to that too. I'm really upset about it.
You give so much credence to these arguments that anyone who has a view that's not the official U.S. mainstream narrative, oh, well, they really have a secret agenda. Oh, they're really, a useful idiot, like apparently Tim Pool and Dave Rubin and Benny Johnson are.
And that's the issue.
And that's that's even though, like I said, I find the details sort of amusing, I also am disgusted by it because it gives so much credence to those bad faith attacks that anyone who dissents on the Ukraine war is actually being paid in rubles by the Kremlin or whatever.
Exactly, and that on Ukraine and on Israel specifically. Lauren Chen was somebody who was very vociferous about dual loyalty accusations and she actually spoke about free speech for Hamas protesters, one of the very few right-wing people who was doing that. And now everybody who is pro-Israel is dismissing her out of hand and is like, look, she was actually the one guilty of dual loyalty at the time. And guess what? They're right. It's actually true. But she literally knew, according to the indictment. Look, maybe she has a defense. We haven't heard it yet. I've looked for statements from both her and her husband. Nothing about what the allegations are true or not. That's a real problem. Also in the independent media space, like you were saying, questioning Ukraine, how many times have accusations been leveled here? Oh, you're a Russian propagandist. It's like, well, apparently not a good one because I'm not getting paid. Be nice. You could buy a pretty fancy Cybertruck, I think, with some of that money. But this is the issue, is that now all of independent people, especially people with dissenting views, are going to get smeared to high heaven by all of these, who knows, the Mueller she wrote, empty wheel, all of these lunatics, literal Russiagate-obsessed lunatics. They're having the greatest field day that they've ever had. I even see, generals, people like Mark Hertling over at CNN. He's like, this is the tip of the iceberg of the Russian propaganda machine and all that. And they're going to take this kernel and explode it out to anybody who has a dissenting view. I guess if any other independent creators and all that are out there, it is so imperative. Actually, the onus is on you. And I don't think it's fair, right? Because CNN is paying its bills with pharma money. So is Fox News and all these other people. And they don't have to answer any questions because theirs is legitimate and legal, and that's all cool.
Yeah.
That they take political advertising dollars and literally go to the campaigns and sell them airtime. Apparently that's fine.
Remember, was it Saudi or one of the Gulf monarchies where they directly took a bunch of money and did a whole vertical that was just propaganda for that country? Remember that CNN did that?
Of course. CNN, or remember CNN Turk, that's actually a whole bag of worms and nobody...
I don't know anything about that.
My point is just, they don't have to answer for all the sketchy hundreds of billions that they take from major corporations, financial interests, gold, Viagra, and all these other places. And that's a double standard, but it doesn't matter. We're up against a system, and the system will use this to try and smear and destroy you have given them more ammunition that they could ever want. You know, and from now on, that's just going to be the classic thing that people put out there. Why don't we get to the statements?
Let's put Tim's statement up, this A6. By the way, you mentioned Lauren Chen hasn't put out a statement, at least when I was looking yesterday. She hadn't. I wonder if she's worried about legal jeopardy because
so I spoke to Brad Moss. And he was like, she's in big trouble. The fact that she didn't even get indicted this time around is kind of astounding, and maybe she's cooperating with the government. But I find it hard to believe. She was retweeting people and posting as of like 11 hours ago whenever the indictment came out.
Yeah.
So how is that possible?
Right. Well, because again, there's no allegation that Tim, Dave Rubin, Benny Johnson, Lauren Southern, these other people did anything wrong. In the indictment, they say, look, they had no idea, right? But the indictment alleges that Lauren Chen and Liam Donovan did know, and referring to them as the Russians, and were deceiving Tim Pool, you know, Benny Johnson, Dave Rubin, et al. So yeah, I do wonder if they're in legal jeopardy. Anyway, here's Tim's statement. He says, my statement regarding allegations and the leaked DOJ indictment. By the way, he corrected that. It wasn't leaked. It was just like officially posted on their website. Anyway, should these allegations prove true, I, as well as the other personalities and commentators, were deceived and are victims. Cannot speak for anyone else at the company as to what they do or to what they are instructed. The Culture War podcast was licensed by Tenet Media. It existed well before any license agreement with Tenet, and it will continue to exist after any such agreement expires. The only change with the agreement was that the location of the live broadcast moved to Tenet's YouTube channel. I and TCW never produced any content for Tenet Media. Never at any point did anyone other than I have full editorial control of the show, and the contents of the show are often apolitical. Examples include discussing spirituality, dating, and video games. Yeah, that's what he's known for. The show is produced in its entirety by our local team without input from anyone external to the company. TCW is a separate company, not associated with timcast.com or other properties. It exists solely for the production of the Culture War podcast. That being said, we still do not know what is true, as these are only allegations. And then he goes, Putin is a scumbag, Russia sucks donkey balls, the journalists who wish to jump the gun, create their own narrative, or lie about what is currently going on. You can eat my Irish, etc. So that's his response, basically really trying to be like, no, I promise I wasn't taking, you know, this was all my own idea. This existed before this Russian influence operation, and trying to put some distance between himself and Tenet Media. I mean, it's, listen, in a technical sense, yes, you are a victim. You were also getting millions of dollars to do this, so it's hard to like cry me a river.
That's the problem about the whole, I mean, you were bamboozled. It's true, but I mean, let's be real. There are a lot of people who were bamboozled who also should have, you know, whenever somebody gets conned, you're like, I feel bad for you. But also it's like, really? You know, you really thought that an Indian guy on the phone, you know, that he was from Microsoft, you're supposed to give him 50 grand?
Yeah,
really?
But in this instance,
that
you're not getting conned out of money.
No, 100%.
You're making millions of dollars.
That's my point. Is that it's like, okay, yeah, technically yes, but you know, let's be honest here.
Yes.
Benny also put out a statement. Let's put this up there.
Kind of similar vibe with him.
Statement on the leaked DOJ indictment. Again, not leaked. A year ago, a media startup pitched my company to provide content as an independent contractor. Our lawyers negotiated a standard arms-length deal, which was later terminated. We are disturbed by the allegations in today's indictment, which made clear myself and other influencers were victims in this alleged scheme. My lawyers will handle anyone who states or suggests otherwise.
I have Dave Rubin's statement too, which we don't have an element for because it came out later, but he says, statement on the DOJ indictment, these allegations clearly show I and other commentators were the victims of this scheme. I knew absolutely nothing about any of this fraudulent activity, period. People of the Internet was a silly show covering viral videos, which ended 4 months ago. The DOJ has never contacted me regarding this matter. I have no intention to comment further. This screenshot from the indictment speaks for itself. And he screenshots a part of the indictment that talks about the fact that Lauren Chen and Liam Donovan, who ran Tenet Media, that they work together to obscure the source of the funding. So basically saying like, listen, they tricked us. They knew, they were lying, and you know, it's really on them, not on us, seems to be the implication of screenshotting that particular part of the indictment.
I mean, look, they did trick them, right? And Lauren and Liam, I mean, honestly, sorry. If this is true, you're scum. You really are, because you not only, you know, knowingly took money from a foreign government, you also put other people in a position where now they're named in a federal indictment. And look, I mean, this is the other thing. Do they have to give that money back? Like, what do the clawback things look like from the Department of Justice? This is literally foreign cash that has been washed. I don't know what that asked. I asked a couple of lawyers. They said it actually depends on what the government is going to do. If you're the DOJ, you probably hate all these people anyway. You really going to give them a free ride? And it's not like that money hasn't already been put in the bank and probably paid to employees, like you could be setting yourself up for a very serious problem with the US government. The other thing is too, with Lauren Chen and all of them, if they haven't even been arrested, then what? Did you roll up? Like, did you cooperate now? So now you're both, cooperating with the government, and you were not even a useful idiot. You knowingly conspired with a foreign government. This gets back to integrity. I mean, I remember at one point I was approached, I think it was Al Jazeera, and they were like, oh, there was some stupid thing that they were trying to do. And I was like, hey, no offense, I'm sure this is fine, but you guys take money from the Qatari government. I'm like, I don't take money from foreign governments. And that kind of took offense at that, actually. They're like, that suggests that we're not independent. I'm like, it's not about that. It's a conflict of interest. I don't do that. I wouldn't even take money from our own government if some national State Department thing was like, we wanted to give you a fellowship. I'm like, yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
And that's what you kind of have to do in this business is to bring it back to the ads. We could retire several times over. We're willing to read Manscaped ads. Just not going to happen. And does that make life more difficult? I mean, I guess in a sense. But the point is that when you're up against large forces who are going to try and destroy you, then you should definitely have a lot more scruples. I mean, for example,
you have to be unimpeachable.
With Dave Rubin, to look at some of these tenant videos about Dave Rubin, it's getting, 8,000 views of him being like, why South Park is real life. And I'm like, bro, like seriously? You really, really believed you were that this was making $100,000? And I should say this, Dave has happy to accuse people of being pro-Hamas and all this other stuff, right? So it's like, bro, what do you think happened? Who's paying for that fancy little studio down in South Florida? And, if some of this is all unfair, I'm just saying, like, it's not like they have all this charity when they're accusing other people, especially Dave. Benny, who I know on a personal level, I believe that he didn't know any of this. Tim, I don't know him as well, but same thing. The problem is just that the integrity is so important for independent media. And now, of course, all the Russian pro-Ukraine people are pulling all of these clips of them who are doubting, the narrative or whatever in Ukraine. And they're just saying, look, they were literally on a Russian payroll. You've discredited anybody in the independent space. And to that, that is actually what pisses me off the most about this entire thing. Because again, for all of them, we all know what the actual dollars and cents look like, right? We know what the dollars and cents are supposed to look like. And when something changes orders of magnitude away from them, your bullshit detector should be very high. Now, if it's a Silicon Valley American investor with a page and they're like, well, our plan is to start small and go big, maybe, even then it's a little weird. But yeah, it's a conceivable plan. But nothing about this makes any sense whatsoever at all. And that's the problem.
A fundamentally uneconomic proposition, you have to ask, why?
Yes. Yes.
Why?
Yes.
Is this like I am obviously being a tool for them for something. What is it? Right? And, maybe if it's an ideological project you agree with, maybe you can live with that. But to just, be placated by this phony resume and not ask any further questions is, it's embarrassing. Like there's no other word around it. And not only have you provided ammunition for people to come after any independent media creators, but you've really discredited your entire body of work. Because people are sharing all the many tweets of Tim Pool saying like it's civil war and like, oh gee, I wonder why Russia was interested in having like this particular commentary sponsored. So yes, this was a relatively, short-lived, it wasn't a long-term media project or partnership or whatever. They go to great lengths in their statements to make it clear that this was a short-term project, they've severed ties, whatever. But if you think that people are going to segregate off this one narrow slice of your commentary from the entire rest of your body of work, like, I'm sorry, they're not going to do that.
Yeah, no.
You've called everything that you have ever said into question. Whether that's fair or not is a different story.
I don't think it's fair, but that's the issue, is that, when you're up against the type of people, like especially you and I know on Israel, that is the red line, right? And on that one, they are having the greatest field day of their lives. I see them all with the witch hunt already began. See, her anti-Semitism was sponsored by the Russians. See, this was clearly an effort to discredit the glorious nation of Ukraine. And it's like, no, these are legitimate points of view. And also though, it is kind of interesting because it does show you where the true like Russian agenda, people always say it's pro-Trump. Lauren Chen was actively trying to get people not to vote vote for Trump. Like, she's just
really?
a chaos agent. She was like, she's one of these like repeal the 19th people, like don't give women the right to vote.
I'm really not that familiar with her.
Okay.
Yeah, I've like heard her name.
I know
that was
of
the extent
her.
Of it. Yeah.
I was catching up. And it's funny, there are actually people out there, this conservative commentator, Ashley St. Clair, who was on a podcast sevevel months ago, asked about Lauren Chen. And she was like, I think she's getting paid by some foreign influencer.
Are you serious?
Which is astounding. Yeah. She was like, I really believe that. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So credit to her. I wanted to give her a shout out because that's kind of amazing. And she was like, no, a lot of these like pro-life people who are online trying to rally the vote against Trump, she's like, I think they're foreign ops. It turned out to be right. And she specifically was talking about Lauren Chen. So yeah, that's another couple questions about maybe some of these other pro-life activists who are doing that. But I'll just wrap on this. There are a lot of people out there getting paid a lot of money. Russia was certainly one of them, but Israel is also certainly one of them, and Ukraine and Qatar. And so, look, if the DOJ wants to indict all those people, I'm for it. I really am. Get all that money out of there. We'll be sitting here clean as a whistle.
Yeah.
And that's, that would be satisfying. But I also know that this is selective in terms of the outrage, in terms of where people are going to be looking, and in terms of the discrediting for all time, that will follow from this. And I think that's actually a real tragedy for the independent media space.
Why you got?
Because I know a lot of these people.
Why you got to give the resistance libs so much ammo, guys?
Yes.
Why?
They're having such a field day. They really are. So anyway, it's sad. It's sad. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.